Today's webcast will look at custom Jenkins plugin development. The webcast will be brought to you by Matt Nelson, developer at Praqma. If you have any questions, please enter them into either the question feature or the chat feature, and we'll answer them at the end. For now, I'll pass you over to Adam.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks to Jinda. Before we get starting and I hand it over to Matt, I just want to give you guys a brief presentation on Praqma. We are specialists in continuous delivery and DevOps and have been working with these two areas for the past decade. We don't sell any products. We advise companies on continuous delivery and DevOps and help them implement it and to reach their goals within these areas. We're currently based out of Denmark and have an office in the capital, Copenhagen, as well as in Aarhus, and are in the process of opening an office in Oslo in Norway. We're very fond of working with open source. However, we are Atlassian partners, Office partners, IBM, as well as CA Technology partners as well. So in the end, whatever combination of tools our customers prefer, we tend to work with. Much of our work is, however, based around Jenkins, as we are fond of the open source and very active within the community and has been since it was called Hudson. Besides doing the yearly Jenkins user conference, we are Scandinavian ambassadors of the Jenkins. In terms of what we're going to talk to today, we have developed a lot of plugins, among others the ClearCase UCM plugin, the Matrix Reloaded, and the Config Rotator, which are all available online and free for everybody to download. And Matt, who will take you through this webinar, is one of our lead developers, and he has been involved in the development of most of these plugins. So thanks a lot for joining again, and Matt, up to you.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, my name is Matt Nelson. I'm a developer at Praqma. I've been working here for 2 years. As Adam said just now, I'm currently the maintainer of namely the ClearCase UCM plugin, which is the SCM plugin for IBM's ClearCase UCM. We've also created in conjunction with other companies, and that plugin has been developed in conjunction with other companies. Also the author of the memory map plugin, which purpose is to record and record the maximum memory available on a chip and use during a build. So there's a lot of plugins I've been part of, and they are all free to download on JenkinsCI.org, and they will be in your Jenkins Update Center. So my course is about Jenkins plugin development. For the purpose of this, it's called Jenkins CI plugin fundamentals, and I'll take you through the following things. First, I'll give you a brief introduction to the Jenkins object model, and I mean very brief because I can't cover everything, but I can cover what I have been going through and what I have been working with in my plugins. And I reckon that's probably what most people will be working on again if you decide to take up on Jenkins development. I'll give you a very brief explanation of the project lifecycle in Jenkins from the build starts, from the build is scheduled to the build is finished and reporting is done on the outcome of the build. I'll give you a brief explanation of what an extension point is. And show you a concrete example on how you extend Jenkins. I'll tell you how to get inside the community. It's a very tightly knit group, and everyone is friendly. There's an active community, so we highly recommend people getting involved. I'll tell you how to get help when you're stuck. And finally, once you have created your plugin, how to actually get it released and make it public in the Jenkins Update Center. Yeah, that's what I'm going through. So let's start. This is the object model at a glance. If you can see the gray box on the right, that's what my plugin will be using. the main component of the plugin we'll be using, which I'll have a demo of it. But if you start from the left, we have what we call the item job, add the project, and freestyle project, which is basically your job in Jenkins. You create a job. You have several types. One of those that are not listed here, for example, the Maven plugin, the Maven project type, or the Matrix project type. They are all specializations of the abstract project. They are, again, left side is your project. Then you have, when your job is started, you get a run, which is basically when you click on a job project, you get a list of builds. And builds are, of course, they are started whenever they are needed. Usually they're triggered by an SM. If we take a look to the upper left, we have the action interface, which is basically a way of saying this object can contribute some kind of icon or something the user can interact with. They are also used to store metadata between plugins, or metadata between builds. That's basically it. But I will be focused on the build and the project in this presentation, and you will see how to use an action to store data between builds. This is just to get started. This is just basically a depiction of the default project lifecycle in Jenkins. We usually start out by you have something that you pull, or you have a system that has a triggers a Jenkins job. For example, there's a stash. For example, has a trigger plugin to start a job. And when your job starts, you go to the pre-SM. You get to the SM phase where you prepare your workspace for your build. When the build is done, usually you enter to the post-build, which is kind of like it's like an aggregation of your results. It's often here that you draw a graph of your failed unit test, record cyclomatic complexity, record compiler warnings, etc., etc. And my plugin will be in the last two parts, and that's why I've put in the associated class, which we need to extend in order to add the specific component to Jenkins. So for the build, you will have a builder, and for the post build, in our case, we'll have a recorder. There are some subtle differences between the recorder and the notifier, but they usually notifier is used because sometimes post builds that need to notify other projects to start. For example, you trigger a downstream project when your build is successful, for example. So that's how they're used and why they are there. This is a default lifecycle, and there is stuff in between, just before build and just after build. Where you can there's something called a build wrapper, which you can implement to do something right before the start of the build and right after the build. And then after, we still get your post-build phase with all your post-build steps. As said before, I briefly mentioned the build step, which is what we are going to implement in our builder. There's a way we need to describe how our builder looks in the UI. For example, when you add, for example, if you execute Windows batch script, you choose from list, you get a drop-down box where you have to put in your command. So we need somehow to describe how our builder looks and what configuration elements are required for it to work. So there are builds that are describable objects, so we can associate data with it. There are also extension points, and you can see here we also have a publisher, which, as I said from the previous slide, which can be either a recorder or notifier. We're going to use a recorder in this case, but they are used to aggregate results. And I won't go into much detail on how the class hierarchy in Jenkins, because that's not what you usually do when you start creating plugins in Jenkins. By far the easiest way is to open a plugin and see what's in there. Yeah, and an important thing about Jenkins is to make note of that it's a distributed architecture. So you need to make sure when you develop your plugin that your plugin will also work when it happens to run on a slave. Your plugin might need to execute a command on a remote computer. You have to make absolutely sure that that happens, and that's also one of the things I'll briefly explain to you today on how to get that working. And the short explanation is that you can use the file path object to access the remote computer's file system in a plugin. But more on that later. Yeah, so how to extend Jenkins? Jenkins, what can you actually extend? One thing you can extend, you can add security model and security credentials. You can add use command if you, I don't know if you're familiar with, for example, the pipeline view or the radiator view, the dashboard view. There's a ton of stuff you can extend with use. You can even create a plugin that just adds a single column to the existing view. You can implement console annotators, which basically colors your console output in Jenkins. You can implement status widgets, for example. They can be dynamic. You can also implement JavaScript, so you can get some kind of dynamic UI elements. You can implement new build steps, builders, which is I'm going to do and show you how to do today. And you can implement new post-build step, which can be result collectors. And for example, the build step, they also you use to modify the results of your build. So that's also something I'm going to show you how to do that. You have listeners, which is something that isn't quiet in the background. And they are also extendable. I'm also going to briefly show you how to do that. But basically, there's too much to list, and at the end of the slides here, I'll get you a reference with a series of links to this stuff. So, but let's get on with it. I mentioned it briefly earlier. Usually, when you extend a plugin and you write a plugin, you want to describe how the UI looks to Jenkins. Some extension points are there. These extension points have a describable object and a data-bound constructor, which takes your form object. When the user clicks apply or save, the form gets saved and you get an instance of your describable object. These describable objects often have views associated with them, and views can be developed either using Jelly or Groovy. And there's a standard for that. So Jenkins will look for some specific named Jelly or Groovy files for representing these views. Index, floating box, and summary. I've just done a few of them. There's also a config, which is basically for the builder, which it's the view for the configuration screen in the job list. And the view files must be put in a package that matches the fully qualified class name of the describable object. So, but more on that, I'm show you how to do that later on. Yeah, but that's a describable. It's not all objects that are describable objects. Something that does not have an UI use element is usually not describable. But if you want to contribute your plugin to your Jenkins installation, or to contribute something to the Jenkins installation, you need to mark your class with extension. For describable objects, that's the extension input in a public static inner class of your concrete implementation, but I'll show that will also be explained. And the extension, for example, if you wish to extend something that doesn't require UI, for example, the run listener, that's where you mark that with the extension. And the cool thing about this is that by the way of this structure and this architecture, you can actually have your own plugin implement its own extension point. So, for example, we have the Git plugin created, which is part of the standard library on Jenkins CI. This plugin is designed in such a way that the author has created it such that is added that I know you know GitHub Git plugin. You have a list of special behaviors you can attribute to your plugin, and he has made that an extension point. So you can create a plugin that basically just adds one option, for example, to the Git plugin. That makes it very flexible. So you can actually, you can design for flexibility and plug-in ability when you create your plugin. Keep that in mind when you create your plugin. So if you want other users to easily contribute to your plugin, it's a good idea to implement it as an extension point. So yeah, but you can use that as an inspiration. I won't go into this today in the demo, but it's possible. This is a weird example actually. We have a plugin called Config Rotator, which on the main you have when you're in Jenkins main menu, we have an icon which is this is an unprotected Ruby action. And that's a special case because this is actually an action that is can be seen everywhere, and it basically provides a link with some details. But more on that later. But this is just an example of what you can actually extend. As you see, blue balls, that's also something you can also, in your green ball plugin, you can also have a plugin for actually change the colors of the balls in your Jenkins installation. And you can see that this class is marked with the extension annotation. An important thing to remember and to keep in mind when doing Jenkins is that we often want to store data between metadata associated with a build. In my case, I just store the, for example, I'm going to demonstrate, I store something between here, and you can store whatever you want. And as long as your object is actionable, then you can add an action to that. So, for example, you can add build action to a build, and you can add project action to a project. These actions contribute a UI if you so desire. There is also an invisible action which do not have a UI footprint but is still there, and you can store metadata about your build in it. And this data is persisted. You can actually see it when you open a build's XML file to see what was actually stored there. As I said before, you can contribute UI via views. These views follow special rules, and I'm going to explain them to you. Yeah, it's the same rules as with Willa, that your jelly files or your view files must be put in a package name that matches the fully qualified class name of the action. Yeah, but this will all be demonstrated in the demo. Before we start with the demo, I just want to share some lessons I've learned. Since by definition, unless otherwise specified, everything happens on master when you create a new build step or you create a new post build step. So we need to make sure that if you want to do something on the slave, you need to delegate it. You delegate it by either using callables or file callables, or launcher for just simple command line options. This is I just read today on the Jenkins CI name, so these two classes, file callable and callable, are going to be changed later on, so you can implement security. But you can do well with that. But I won't demonstrate the callable today. But I probably will add. I'll probably be able to add that example to my plugin later today, or at some later point. But they should be easily looked up and see how to use those. Another lesson learned is that you need to test. You simply need to test your plugins using slaves. So use use the Jenkins test harness, or at least not the plugin harness, but the stuff that comes with it when you develop plugins. So do use the Jenkins rule to create an online slave, and set, when you create a test, set them to run on a slave. And remember, always remember to treat both what you pass into a callable and what is returned. What is the template parameter on your class here, what is going to be returned to the master when the delegation is done. So always make your returned object a serializable. Some of these errors, it won't complain actually when if your class is not implemented in the serializable interface. It will simply just fail when the plugin executes, so test it before doing so. Yeah, my demo today will be it's going to be as little unorthodox. It's going to be, I created a game where the user inputs a number between 1 and 6 as a parameter. The plugin will then actually generate a random number, and based on the result, if I guess correctly and the number is equal to the randomly generated number by Jenkins, I will not fail the build. But it'll demonstrate how to actually set the status of a build in Jenkins, and it's going to be like the styro game. It will show you how to actually interact with parameterized builds. For the convenience here, I put oh, there's an apostrophe too much at the end there, but there's, if you look at the last bullet, I put show you how to clone it. It's freely available, and you can just play with it if you wish. Yeah. So, and I said before, if you use Jenkins to build stuff, so if you clone my project and cd into it, into the location, and you type maven HPI:run, it will fire up the plugin you see here. And let me show you my plugin. So this is what you get after you seed into the root of this project. When you test a build, when you're creating plugin with Jenkins, what you get is this one here when you do HPI:run. So let me show you what my plugin does, and then in a moment I'll get to the source code. We create a new job here. We are a freestyle project. So let's wait a second here for this to start. I don't know why it's so slow. So we have our project here. So we have created a builder. So we have created a guess a number builder here. So you can see here the name is here, guess a number. We have two fields, lower and upper bound. So we save that, and we need to make this parameterized. So we add a string parameter which we call a guess, and we'll default to 2. So let's apply, save. So we build here, and build. So here we see what we get now. Here is actually we get this is a project action, which is a link, an icon with a link, an action. If you click on the build itself, this is a build action with an icon and a link as well. The link here will basically say that we guessed correctly. We randomize the number 2 and we could guess the number 2 in our console, so they match and the build is successful. I can show you something. I can just go back here. Let's see if we try it again. Our build is now unstable. That means we actually go back here, which say guess 1. We guess 2. We rolled 5. We did not guess correctly, and the build has become unstable. I'm also in my build, if you select one here. I'm also getting some console output here. UKS2, Jenkins 5. We have one guess in our project, and we have done 2 answers while we've been running this demo. So that's our plugin. So we can go and look at that plugin. Let's start with the builder. We'll go to the top. We have here, I don't know if you see this mark here, we have our guessing builder, which extends a builder. We need to mark the describable image class with an extension. It's build step describer, it's a describable builder. And the first option required method is to say which project type is this build step, can this build step be chosen from. So this basically says you can choose me from whether you choose a matrix project or you choose or the freestyle project. So just put it through there if you want it to be available both to the matrix project and the whatever other projects are there. We have the what should be displayed in the link when you get the list of your builder, guess a number. We have this is just for information. This is we are validating the form field, so it will warn you when you do put in illegal values in the configuration fields. That's this is also that. We have the data bound constructor, so it takes the lower and upper. You saw the 2 configuration properties in my build configuration and match them to these class fields. Then we have the required perform method. Always generally what we do is that if you return true, we continue with the next build step in the list. If you return false, we abort. The best way to actually do is to always return true and throw an abort exception. But more on that. That's something you need to take in consideration. We fetch our variable here and convert that to an integer. We add the action. We add the link icon. We add the link. So when you click the build, you get the link. We add the action with our stuff here, and we add the post build step, which is not so important here, and we print out to the list like get logger, print out Jenkins console. That's basically what it does. Then you can see here I add a publisher. We need to record the data, so I dynamically add the recorder to a project if it's not there already. So we take the recorder here. It has the same perform method, and if our guess was correct and more than half our guesses in the build was correct, we set the result to OK. Otherwise, we mark the build as unstable, as you saw before. And another word, if you look at the builder here up here, you can see I have my resources here. The fully qualified package name for my view files should be net Praqma Jenkins.guessing builder. I have my package here under source main resources. It's a standard Maven structure where I put in my config jelly, which hold my 2 text fields, which are upper and lower limits. I also have for the project action, if you go back here, I also have this part of here, marked here, which is the floating box, which is something you can put on the front page of your project. That is rendered by the floating box jelly. So this is basically just taking it's like it's a standard template language, so you can use your Java methods in your weapon formula, and an index jelly just to print the latest build action. So that's basically it. What more did I need to explain here? But yeah, I think I've covered most of it here. Also, one final note here is we have the run listener, which is which I said before. This is one of these extension points that are not a describable object, but basically this runs in the background. We have one instance running on your Jenkins server, and it will basically you implement the uncompleted and just I globally count the number of correct guesses. So if we have another job, we create another job with using the same builder which contribute the same action, this one will increment globally. So we have two jobs building, it will automatically increment these. So yeah, that is it. And I said before, this is included. I have given you the link for the project, so you can freely download it once we're done with the presentation. Yeah, but that's basically it. So back to my slides here. Yep. So, so what you actually are done with your plugin, you want to get it published. First, you need to actually, Jenkins CI uses, they have a organization under the GitHub.org. So you need to create a repository on GitHub in order to get started. Add your source code to that repository, and that's the first step. And at that point, you probably want to. What most people do is that they create the GitHub account, create a repository, and start developing. And once they're done, they should go to step number 2 on the slide, which is to create a Jenkins CI account and make sure, for your convenience here, make sure that your Jenkins CI account credentials matches your GitHub credentials, because otherwise you will need to add some additional configuration to your Maven settings when you release your plugins. Once you've created a Jenkins CI account and it's been verified by a lieutenant, you sign up on the Jenkins CI mailing list. Once you've signed up on the mailing list, you ask on the mailing list to get your plugin forked to the Jenkins CI group on github.org. What will happen then is that when that's done, they will usually create a Jira conference for bug reporting for you, and they will create a wiki page for you. And just be patient, because there's a number of lieutenants on the development list which can do that for you. When you're done with that, you need to use Maven to release, and you do it this way. Maven release prepare, release perform, provided you have your Jenkins CI account credential matches the ones on your GitHub account, you can use the d-username.d-password properties when you do the Maven release. Otherwise, if you did not do that, you need to edit your settings XML file in your local Maven repository to provide your username and password. Then you don't need to provide the username, password arguments in the release prepare, release perform. I've put in the link on more on how to releasing to Jenkins works. Yeah. One thing to also remember is to keep your wiki page updated when you create your plugins, because there's nothing worse than having an issue with a plugin and then going to the plugin's wiki page and finding out that the wiki hasn't been updated for 2 years, and the UI looks totally different from the document there. So make a habit of updating your wiki page when you do make a new release of your plugin. Yeah. And as I said before, the Jenkins development list is a very active one, so use that. And the best way to actually get started and get running with Jenkins is to just open a plugin, look at the source code, run it using maybe HPI run. Another thing is to also, sometimes it's difficult to find out what plugins, what extension points are these plugins actually using. For example, if you want to do something similar to what the SCM plugin does, or similar to what the pipeline view does, it's a good idea to open them. And I have a list here of what will show which extension point exists, and more importantly, also show which extension point, which plugins that use those extension points. So that's a good link to have if you're like lost on where to actually get started with your plugin. I have a resource summary here for you to use, and I will create I will make a document out of this, so we will be able to get it after when we are started on. I've also included the link to the demo project, which you can freely download and use, and an instruction on how to get it up and running. Yeah, well, that concludes it for me. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. So thank you for listening in, and I think I will pass that over to either Adam or Tejinder. So thank you for listening. Over to you.
Okay, thanks Mads for that great presentation. I'll wait, just in case anyone does have any questions, I'll wait 2 seconds if people have time to enter it. But other than that, thanks for that great presentation.
You're welcome.
No one's entered one as of now. If you do have any questions, just email them over and I can pass them on to Mads. So thanks for the great presentation. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and thanks for attending. And bye for now.